everybody, and welcome to Yew Tree Gallery and the exhibition Fish, Fowl and Fable. You might think that's a rather odd title, and of course it is really, leads to speculation, but I thought it would be very fitting for the artists I'd selected for the show to show their virtuosity, their imagination, and just the way they could interpret the subject to the full of their ability, and indeed they've turned up trumps. Mark Hearld, who's in this main gallery with his collage and decorated ceramics, I'm sure he'd like to just to say a few words himself about his work.
Inevitably, the work is always seasonal. I don't necessarily set out to make work inspired by season, but on my dog walks, you know, the changing scenery, the stubble, ripening, the corn finds its way in. So several of the pieces are informed by harvest. But also earlier in the year, I went to Jaipur, to Rajasthan, to do a mud printing course as part of the wonderful workshops. And the beautiful, vibrant colour of India is soaked in there too. And I've made a paper cut embellished with quite high colour. As well, this time I've made a collaboration with the Cornish potter Debbie Prosser, who's thrown me some fantastic shapes and modelled some tulip vases which I've decorated. As you can see, those behind, beautifully embellished with garden flowers. That's also been a really lovely thing, because earlier in the year I went to the English Tulip Society National Show in Wakefield, which has species tulips, and also there's an incredible event at the Dennis Severs house celebrating the English tulip in a tulip vase. So they're the flavour of the month, and it was wonderful to put a porcupine onto the front of it. Porcupines are something of a new discovery for me, but now that I've begun cutting them out, I'll keep going, because they're just such a fantastic shape to snip out with a pair of scissors.
And here you see the central display is the work of Eleanor Glover. And we're absolutely thrilled to have this work. It is so beautifully, beautifully crafted, so unusual, and there's so much behind it all.
I suppose the hands are part of the symbolism of each piece, that they're about caring and protecting, or they're expressive in themselves, so I haven't been a slave to proportion. And the birds again are symbolical of they're almost like spirits who are, and I find that a lot of the time the work I make is lonely without a protective spirit. And if you look at with this exhibition, because the theme was fowl, fish and fable, it suited me very, very well. But I did make the work especially for the show.
And this central piece, Murderous Millinery, is just quite exceptional. And there's a real story behind this, isn't there?
I was visiting Minsmere in Suffolk and saw photographs of the first protesters against the hat trade, and this suddenly, or eventually, became a piece of work where we were talking about a bird protesting against the feathers that were taken. And in fact, on the Titanic, one of the most expensive parts of the cargo were the bird's feathers being taken to New York for the hat trade. So here you have a sort of collection of feathers inside the body of the figure, but a live bird protesting against that.
And often you use the concept of how we feel inside and how we present ourselves to the world, perhaps. And this particular piece called Gathering, one side of it shows perhaps the chaos within us, and the other is again the two birds being as protective spirits, guides. Is that what you intend with this piece?
Yes, and I made a sort of collage in the back of really a multitude of different materials to try and show that sometimes we're not at all sorted out, but that very often other things come to save us in the end. I try to use materials metaphorically, but although my basic material has been wood for a very long time, and I find that very expressive and alive to use. And I was originally trained as a graphic designer, and then I became an apprentice to Ron Fuller, the great toy maker. So I often use, or I generally use, toy making structures and techniques to put my work together, although it now tells completely different stories.
Here in the Glasshouse Gallery we have the work of Alex Malcolmson and also the rugs of Sue Marshall on either side of his central collection here. Alex's work is quite extraordinary in its meticulousness, its delicacy, and also the way he so lovingly interprets the seabirds of his native Shetland, and often presents them, as on these two here, on sections of boats which he actually brought to his workshop from the Shetlands.
These are pieces of a Shetland boat which I picked up in Shetland along with Mark Hearld. Actually, we had an epic voyage to Shetland to dismantle a derelict boat, and so this is from the Mary Grace, and this is from another boat called the Windward.
Yeah, and the other thing is fishing, and well, you mentioned sailors, and sailors used to carve bone, didn't they?
That's right.
And two of the exhibits there, one's called trout fishing, and the other one is called runes, and they're very intriguing. They're full of different bits and pieces of relevant material.
Well, yeah, they're all things that have some kind of interest to me, and an interest in the sort of history of the Northern Isles, Shetland. A lot of people think that these there are ancient fishing tools, I suppose. People tend to think that if they see them, that they're connected with perhaps the Inuit, who still perhaps use some similar tools, or not so long ago they were still using similar tools. But in fact, in the north of Scotland and possibly all over Britain, people at one time were using similar tools. They'd dredge similar things up in the Dogger Bank. So our ancestors, not so long ago, were catching fish with fish spears.
Yes, gosh, amazing. So, Fish, Fowl and Fable really comes into your work wonderfully. Thank you so much, Alex. On this table and in other parts of the glasshouse room of the gallery, we have this extraordinary collection of modelled ceramic work by Paul Young. Paul's been a potter for probably at least about 40 years, and he has a passion for the 18th century Staffordshire ware and the really very well known potters at that time. There's one chap called Wealden who created a special way of using glaze, so it all rather blended into each other in the firing. And so he's used that technique on some of his pieces too. But they are quite extraordinary. The central piece here is a dovecot. So coming out of each of the little holes is a separate dove, and one can walk all the way around that. And of course there's the wassail bowl, a huge lidded bowl with handles all round, so that the tradition is that everyone holds the handle and takes a sip at the time of wassailing, which is I think about 12 days after Christmas. Paul has one of Mark Hearld's puppies, which is Albert, and I rather think that his wicket here is modelled on his Albert. But otherwise he uses for his subjects fabulous creatures like Athena the owl, and rather angry looking crow over there, or is it a raven? No, I think it's a raven, sorry. And a very, very ferocious tiger. So they're all really quite playful, but they're beautifully put together, and such intricate, delicate work with the leaves and the flowers and all the decorative elements. But he also makes domestic wear using its traditional slipware, really. And so he slip trails designs into his platters and bowls and tea bowls, etc. And these are all on display here in this gallery, and really quite delightful and very unusual. And then on the slate windowsill is a collection of work by Rebina Jack, whose work is always so popular here. Rebina works near the Essex marshes, where there are lots of obviously wild birds and creatures that she can see on her walks and use as subject matter. So she's also very much uses the idea of endangered species, like the polar bears sitting on their tiny little remains of ice floats, tigers and leopards and penguins. So she really represents very much what's happening around the world, sadly, at the moment, in that so many species are becoming extinct or certainly endangered. But her work is very beautiful, very delicately done, and pattern is something that really is an intrinsic part of each piece. Very, very intricate pattern indeed, lots of tiny dots and curves, and they just set off the central image beautifully. In this cabinet we have a collection of new work from Guy Royle, the silversmith and jeweller. His imagery very often centres around birds, and for this exhibition he's created a particular beautiful bangle. It's quite a stylised design. It's very intricate and patterned, and it has gold, 18-karat gold decoration in it. And he's also used it on the brooches, the beautiful little bird. This is a bird and a fish, so it couldn't be more fitting to the subject of the exhibition. So as you see, he makes necklaces, often carves the stones himself, and earrings, as well as the brooches and bangles. Well, I hope you've enjoyed your tour of the exhibition, and if you have the chance to come down to this far west of Cornwall, do come in and visit, because we're open for 2 whole months until the end of October, from Tuesdays to Saturdays. We also have sculpture gardens surrounding the galleries, and in it there are sculptures by Helen Nock and also carved work by Rhys Ingram. There's plenty to see, and plants and things to enjoy as well, and a pond and seats. Also in the gallery we do have Mark's latest book, the 2nd edition of Raucous Invention, The Joy of Making, which is published by Thames and Hudson. And also a first book of nature written by Nicola Davis, illustrated by Mark, which is a delightful book for introducing children to nature and the joys of it. So I hope we very much will see you. Otherwise, of course, you can look at the exhibition on the website, and you can always order anything that you might fancy. Thanks very much.
Oh, amazing. And that was a run of like some quite ancient terrace. It was like 3 terraces, wasn't it?
Yeah, have